Good afternoon and welcome to our What's Buzzin' at Georgia Tech webinar series. My name is Tyler Barker, coordinator within the Office of Parent and Family Programs here at Georgia Tech. We would just like to welcome you to our webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to be with us here today. Today we are going to talk about supporting your student who may be in their first or second year in regards to student success and what that looks like at Georgia Tech. We are joined by some very high profile and special guests here on campus from the academic side of the house who are taking time out their schedule to kind of share some things about supporting your student, but also to hear from you. And they would love to hear from you in regards to maybe questions, concerns, or just comments or advice. They would just love to hear from you. If you have a question for any of our presenters, please feel free to utilize the Q&A feature. Once again, if you have any questions for our presenters, please feel free to utilize the Q&A feature. We will be sure to get to your questions at the end of the PowerPoint presentation. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Carrie Shepler, and she will be moderating today and introduce the rest of our panelists.
Hi, I just want to echo Tyler's welcome and appreciation for you all taking the time to be here today. Seeing folks put that effort into supporting their students is always really heartening for those of us who work with students on this side. So thank you for your time. My name is Carrie Shepler. I have some new roles and I keep stumbling over it. So let me try that again. I'm a faculty member in the School of Chemistry and Biochemistry, as well as the Assistant Dean for Teaching Effectiveness in the College of Sciences. So what I'd like to start with, I think Tyler is going to share. We have a little bit of a presentation, very loose, not formal at all, but I do want to give my co-panelists an opportunity to both introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about how their particular role supports student success. So we can go to the next slide, Tyler. And we may be joined by another colleague. She's been detained. Hopefully she will be able to join us here shortly, but let's start with Dr. Greco.
Hi, Dr. Ed Greco from the School of Physics. I teach and oversee a huge chunk of the introductory physics program, as well as advise some of our physics majors and support a few of our physics-centered student organizations here at Georgia Tech.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Spencer?
I'm Beth Spencer, and I'm the Director of Undergraduate Advising and Transition, and also here today to represent many of our Office of Undergraduate Education programs. What my office does and what I'm also involved in doing is we provide academic coaching for all of our students across campus. We are the hub for Exploratory Advising, which is a great resource for students who maybe are looking for fit or confirmation of the major, exploring their options. Our office brings GT 1000 and 2000, our first year, and transfer seminars to all of our students. We also work closely with tutoring and academic support, so we can definitely talk about opportunities for tutoring and peer learning. And over the years, in addition to advising and coaching, I often also teach GT 1000 or 2000, our academic recovery courses. And in the last couple of years, I've had a great opportunity to teach the history of disease and medicine, which has been a lot of fun for me. So happy to be here today and hoping for some really great questions.
Thank you. Dr. Riggle?
Hi, everybody. My name is Colleen Riggle. I serve as Associate Dean of Students in the kind of newly named Student Engagement and Wellbeing Division. I particularly work within the Dean of Students office, but the Division of Student Engagement and Wellbeing represents a lot of different areas that support your students kind of outside the academic classroom. So that could be programming or housing or dining. Particularly here in the Dean of Students office, we will support your students if they have any class absences for any reason, they're dealing with any kind of personal issues that we need to kind of connect with them on, or maybe kind of connect them to their faculty in those ways. So I can answer questions about that and also kind of manage our kind of after hours support services as well.
Excellent, thank you so much. And Dr. Steinbart was able to join us. Dr. Steinbart, we're just sort of going through introducing ourselves and talking about how our roles help support student success.
Hi, I'm Enid Steinbart. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Advising and Assessment in the School of Math. probably more importantly to your students, I teach a lot of calculus classes and other classes, and so I engage with students that way, and also just helping them get the right resources they need when they are in those calculus classes.
And my role in the School of Chemistry and Biochemistry is very similar to Dr. Steinbart's. I'm an academic advisor for chemistry and biochemistry majors, but again, importantly to a lot of your students, I work closely with the first year chemistry program. So courses like Chem 1211, Chem 1212, and Chem 1310. I'm not actually teaching any of those this particular semester, but just sort of do a lot of things associated with those programs. In the College of Sciences, my position is a new one, so that's been really exciting, but the goal there is to work to help support faculty to ensure that students are getting a really good experience in our courses. So I do, before we open up to any sorts of questions, Tyler, if we could go to the next slide. I think one thing that you all may be hearing about from your students is that we are coming up on the first couple of weeks of exams. This week and next week are big ones. I know I have an exam in my class next week. I know some of the first year chemistry courses have exams coming up this week. In my class this morning, as I was hanging out at the front of the class getting ready, heard a lot of conversation about I have this many exams and I have a lab report, and so I think students are really starting to feel that. For those of you who have students who are in their first year of college, this is their first round of that, and it can be a lot to deal with. Some folks are pretty laid back about it, and then get a little panicked as they get closer or even after the exams. Other folks are a little bit more stressed, heading into exams, just dealing with that time management, things like that. An additional layer that I think we have to think about, and this is pertinent because I heard my students talking about it this morning. I have sophomores mostly, and they were talking about it's not their first college exam. It is their first exam in person for some of them. It's the first time that they've been in a room with other people taking an exam. So that's a little bit of an interesting thing to think about as well. So, the first exams can be, for some folks, they're going to go really well, and that's going to be great, and it's going to be a good confidence builder, and I think that that's something that's really good for students to work their way through. For others, it may be the first time that they don't do as well as they're accustomed to doing, and that is something that I think we need to think about when we hear students talk about not doing well. We have to be real specific about, well, what do you mean by not well? Because not well might mean a high B, but that's not what they're used to. And so we have to kind of think about that. Midterm progress reports are going to be coming out relatively soon. I don't know the date off the top of my head. Dr. Spencer probably does.
Monday, October 4th.
I assumed you would have that up and ready. So Monday, October 4th. So progress reports, for those of you who are unaware, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a check-in point. There's nothing official in terms of it being on their transcripts at the end of their time at Tech or anything like that. It's just a way of saying it looks like things are going pretty well, or it looks like maybe we need to do some things to get this turned around. Maybe we need to put a little bit more focus. It's just a way to help students kind of say, where am I with this class? So satisfactory or unsatisfactory in each course. These won't be sent to the people supporting our students. They'll be available for students in their Buzzport. So, it's something that if you're looking to check in with students, you might ask, hey, I heard something about these midterm progress reports. How did that go? What you may find is that some students haven't gone in and looked at them. If students are looking at them and talking to you about them, one thing that you want to check in with them on is, do they know what criteria were used? So did the instructor look at just the first exam? Did they look at the first exam and a couple of quizzes? What exactly was it based on? Because that should be communicated to the students by each faculty member for each course. So the other thing to look out for there with midterm progress reports would be academic advising. And so I'm going to let Dr. Spencer jump in and talk about that.
Great, thank you. So just as Dr. Shepler was saying, midterm progress reports are a great way to give students in our 1,000 and 2,000 level classes some good feedback on how they're doing, just a good checkpoint. We do ask all of our academic advisors on campus to reach out to students after progress reports come out, particularly to their students in their first year. So that includes transfer students in their first year who have earned, if they've earned 2 or more unsatisfactory grades, just because not to freak them out, but just to have the conversation about, okay, so what does this mean to you? What kinds of changes are you going to make to reach the goals that you have for the rest of the semester? Or maybe it's like, hey, it's time to actually set some really good goals and a plan to achieve them. It's a good time for advisors to have conversations with students to remind them about all the great campus resources we have to help anyone who's not meeting their own expectations to do that, to turn them around. We can give students pep talks on how to actually go to office hours and how to talk to their faculty about how they're doing in their class and so on. So any of our first year students who earn 2 or more U's will be contacted by their advisor and requested to make an advising appointment. But also note that many of our advising units will also reach out to any student at any stage along the game who has 2 or more, or sometimes even just any U's, just to check in with them. But also, if your student has any, at that point, that's around week 7 of the 6 or 7 of the semester. If your student is feeling like, well, maybe I don't really know exactly how I'm doing, or I want to talk to somebody, that's also a good time for them to also proactively reach out and talk to their advisor if they haven't already done that. But advisors are there just to help students get on track, stay on track, connect with resources, build confidence, set goals, etc. In addition to thinking about registration.
Thank you, Dr. Spencer. And we'll talk about some of those resources here in a bit. But first, I would like to invite Dr. Greco and Dr. Steinbart and Dr. Riggle to weigh in on any thoughts about this first round of exams, things that you get asked by students frequently, any pieces of advice for the folks supporting our students.
I'll step in. Today, I'm teaching multivariable calculus, and today is their first exam of the semester. And so there's been a lot of, they're very anxious about the exam and what it's going to be like. And this is very different because it's an in-person exam. Many of their assessments up to now, even in this class this fall, have been online. So it will feel different for them. Sometimes they don't achieve what they were hoping to for that first exam, but to move on and to learn from it and think about tests as being a learning experience. Also, I encourage students not to compare themselves with other students. You're in your own space, and talk to the instructor beforehand, before the test, and after the test. You can learn a lot that way, and also it's just a relationship. It's not a instructor versus student. I think it more as our goal is to learn multivariable calculus, and we're going to do it together as a team.
I could say a couple things just from the probably more non-academic side, would just be to kind of have some things in place, right? So you have the test, you need to study for those things, but I don't think you need to stay up all night to do that, right? So make sure you're getting proper sleep, you're eating right, maybe getting out for a walk or just taking some time for self-care, I think is important before and after the exam, not during the exam. But before or after, like having some of those things in place, like have something kind of where you can kind of debrief and kind of take some downtime, because it is hard for that first exam. And I like what Dr. Shepler said about acknowledging that first and second year students are taking these things in person, and that's kind of different, right? Like it's been online, they've maybe been in their home environment, and I've been talking with students just about how they actually have to plan to get up for class and kind of get ready and those sorts of things. So you may just need to build in some of that time to do those things. Make sure you get, some good nutrition and sleep.
Yeah, I've started to get asked this week, like, how should I study for our first test, which is next week? And I just try to reiterate to all of them that there's not like a single magic bullet routine, like if they do this, they will get an A on the test, that they really should, I can give them general ideas on how to prepare, tell them to try to spread out the preparation. So if they're planning on about 10 hours of study for the test, don't put those 10 hours the day before the test. Not going to go well. Spread it out so that you have time to seek help when you come across things that you don't understand or that don't make sense. So if you start a week early, you can come to office hours, you can go to the tutoring center, you can talk to your friends or the class forum online. The other thing is I think in person will be nice for them because when you give a test in person afterwards, the students, it's not like they just evaporate. The test is over and there's sort of a cathartic, like, oh, how did it go for you? Well, what about this problem? Yeah, that one was hard for me too. So I think the stress will be a little less by testing in person. Maybe they're apprehensive about it, but I think they will enjoy the sort of after-test stress release that comes from an in-person testing experience.
That's such a great point, Dr. Greco. I hadn't thought about that. And I think the other piece of that is I'm starting to remember what it's like to do this in person. When I walk out of the exam room and the students are still out there, there's also that piece where I can kind of do a little bit more in terms of, like, remember, it'll be okay. You don't really know how it went. And if it didn't go well, then we have all of these mechanisms, we'll get it, we'll put it together. So there will be more of those types of opportunities with it being in person as well. That's an excellent point. So I see a couple of questions in the Q&A and as well as in the chat about how can parents partner with students to see the grades, to see the midterm progress reports. And this is, not super comfortable for everybody, but the answer to that is you can ask them, but you can't access them yourself. The students can access those things. They're through their Buzzboard accounts, but there is no portal for parents to log in or anything like that. So this, I think I would encourage you to ask questions, to ask a little bit, maybe prod a little bit more than, how's it going? Fine. To take that questioning maybe a little bit further. And piggybacking on Dr. Riggle's advice, asking about, are you getting enough sleep? Are you, eating things that are not beige? Are you drinking things that don't have caffeine in them? All of those sorts of things. And I know that students can kind of roll their eyes at those things a little bit, but if they're hearing those messages from us as faculty and from staff, and then mom and dad and the folks who are doing the support of them are chiming in with those things too, then I think it does start to resonate a little bit more with them that, this is important. So yeah, those are great questions. Let's talk a little bit about campus resources and then we'll segue more into questions. Those folks who are instructors who are currently teaching classes, and Dr. Spencer teaches classes. I don't think you're teaching this semester, are you, Dr. Spencer?
This semester I've been a substitute in a couple of classes, but I don't have my own this time. So kind of miss it, kind of enjoying doing other things.
Yeah, but I think, let's let folks who are teaching this semester maybe chime in and talk a little bit about office hours. And then Dr. Spencer, of course, talk about office hours, but also maybe some of our excellent Office of Undergraduate Education and Tutoring Support, those types of resources. So Dr. Greco or Dr. Steinbart, would you guys like to jump in?
Sure, happy to. So office hours are something that we stress strongly to students to take advantage of, and they don't always do that. I think because it's intimidating if they don't regularly go to office hours, that they're going to have to go and find an office and come in and have a one-on-one conversation. They're often worried that we might judge them, that, they don't really know the material as well as we thought, or they're not working as hard as we expected. But that's not really the case. What I always try to describe to them is like we're more of a coach. And so when they come in and ask for help, our goal is to meet them where they're at and give them advice and coach them to improve from where they are. Even if it's, I haven't been keeping up with the course, I haven't been doing assignments, I failed the test, I don't understand anything. Okay, let's start from there. There's not going to be a judgment. And office hours are great. They're one of the best parts of teaching, is getting to have that one-on-one interaction where you really get to know your student and get to help them. And they're very efficient. Like I can help students understand content really quickly one-on-one, whereas they might spend a few hours going through different resources and trying to make sense of a problem. We can just have a quick back and forth in person that can really close and fill in those gaps that they might be having. So strongly encourage your students to try. Even if they don't have something to talk about, just tell them to go to an office hour once and just introduce themselves and maybe, say hi to their professor.
I'll chime in with office hours. One of the other things, I have open office hours, so multiple students from my class can come to office hours at the same time. This past year, most of my office hours have been online, which is actually made it easier for many students to come to office hours because they didn't have to say anything. They didn't have to leave their room. They could just show up and they could listen in. They could chime in when appropriate, ask questions. But it felt very non-threatening to many students, as it was reported to me. And now I have some in-person office hours, which I think is fantastic, and I'm holding them outside. And so multiple students can come, and going to office hours is a really great way to learn more about where you are at and to start thinking about. Sometimes you have a question, but you're not really sure why this isn't working. But talking with your professor is a great way to try to address those things.
I think the thing that jumps out to me about office hours is that I think students need to be prepared for the idea. So piggybacking on what Dr. Greco said is, if they're not prepared with a question, that's okay. I think they worry about a little bit, will it be awkward? My goodness, awkward is where I live. Like, they don't need to be worried about that, right? Awkward is fine. We're good. I'm an awkward person. It's okay. So they don't need to worry about that. The other thing I think they need to kind of think about is that sometimes I think faculty inadvertently intimidate students by trying to help. So a lot of times I'll ask a student to, so explain to me, what you're thinking about this problem, or explain, where you got started. And it's not because I want to grill them and put them on the spot and embarrass them. It's because that helps me gauge where they are with the material so that I don't waste their time explaining things that they already understand. If I start at point A when really they're already at L and we just need to get to Z, that's more efficient and it's less frustrating for them. But it sometimes I think can be intimidating to the student if they don't really understand what my purpose in doing that is. Same thing with study tips and how to approach studying for the class. Like, I can tell you 800 different things that you could potentially do to study, but it's going to be frustrating for a student if I start by telling you all the things that you're already doing, right? That's demoralizing. And so often I'll say, tell me how you prepared for the exam. And again, that's not a so I can judge you question. It's a tell me what you've done, because it's not giving you the results that you're looking for so that I can provide an alternate. And so, it's communication, right? Like anything else, trying to make sure that people understand our intent. But I think, helping encourage students, if you hear a story about, oh, well, the faculty member wasn't very helpful, really helping them think about, maybe the person's just not very helpful, or maybe there are some things that you can do, look at it with a different perspective, come at it in a different way that can make that more mutually beneficial.
I might just pop in here for a minute. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I was just going to reiterate that faculty, and this is, I don't teach academic classes. I do teach DT 1000 occasionally, but I sit with a lot of students, and I think we always really do encourage them to talk to their faculty if they're having challenges kind of learning the material. And I think something that we can do on the non-academic side is sometimes bridge that gap, because it may be intimidating to show up to office hours and things like that. So I have more than many times just kind of bridged the gap through an email saying, hey, Dr. Shepler, like, I just met with this student in your class. Do you, they're having some challenges. Do you mind like meeting with them? And sometimes that can be helpful. And I don't mean to be like hand holding, but sometimes it can be intimidating. And so that's where I think we can kind of help with that. Kind of bridging the gap and just kind of elevating maybe that student that they do have some questions and things of that nature. So,
such a great point. Yeah, thank you. While we have you, before we get to Dr. Spencer and some of these other academic resources, are there any other student life resources that you think that we should highlight when we're talking about just managing all of the things that have to go into preparing for exams and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I tell students, whether it's during like facet orientation or any time, is just to ask for help early and often. I think when it's after midterms or it's a couple weeks before the end of the term, and then they're coming forward saying like, I'm just not doing well in the class, or it's not going the way I'd planned. I always like to let them know that there are options and we can kind of figure things out, but I think there are definitely more options on the front end. So I think early and often reaching out for those supports, whether it's talking to your faculty or coming and meeting with one of the deans or just any staff member and trying to get connected in that way, is probably going to be the most helpful as they're kind of going into this exam kind of process and whatnot. So, and also that grades don't define you. I know that that's probably like better, it's kind of a kitschy kind of like phrase or whatever, but like, don't let whatever the score on the paper define who you are as a person, because that's only one number out of the grand scheme of like your entire time, as your students would be here. And it's going to be different. The transition, there's so many different things that are going on, starting college in person and things like that. So.
I agree. I just had a conversation with a student earlier this week about, it's great that you're concerned. They had missed a couple of assignments that they weren't aware of. And were really beating themselves up about it. And my comment was, it's wonderful that you're so concerned about improving your time management skills and things of that nature, but also give yourself a little bit of grace. This is a lot. Everybody's going to miss something. Everybody's adjusting to things, like there's that balance of, yes, I'm glad that you're concerned because I want you to be, I want this to be important to you. But at the same time, you've got to give yourself a little bit of grace as well with those things. So yes, Dr. Spencer, can you tell us about tutoring and academic support and some of those types of resources?
Sure. So yes, faculty can be intimidating, but one of the great things about tech is that we also have lots and lots of peer resources that should be used along with connecting with your faculty for students. And it's really important for students just to try out lots of different options and find good fits, right? So we can come back and let some of y'all actually talk about how TA office hours work. But most of our, first and second year, especially say science courses, also a lot of our other STEM courses, there are undergraduate TAs, sometimes also graduate student TAs who also have office hours. And sometimes students find them maybe a little less intimidating to connect with than faculty, or just a really great supplement to working with faculty. So we often remind students, hey, don't forget about your TAs too. And then we have so many ways for students to engage in peer learning. So tutoring and academic support, they have a good hub website. And I don't know if maybe I'm trying to follow Lacey's instructions and look at the Q&A, but the question hasn't come up to type it in. But just if students just go to tutoring, the parents, you can go to just to tutoring.godtech.edu. You can actually walk through, it's a great hub for all of our tutoring resources on campus. There are many. But they're all free and they're all available to all students. And there's so many opportunities, especially for our first and second year classes, especially in the STEM fields, but not only. And so we have one-to-one appointments the students can make where they can work with a peer for a particular class for up to an hour. We have both in-person and virtual options this semester, so students can find the fit that they feel most comfortable with. We also have the Communication Center, which operates very similarly to the Tutoring and Academic Support Center. That's for tutoring and support on any type of communication project. So it's not just writing a paper, but it's also working on presentation skills, any way that you're trying to communicate your ideas. They also are also located physically in the Clough Undergraduate Learning Commons like we are, and they also have both in-person and virtual services this semester too. OMED, I saw a question like, what is OMED? OMED originally stood for Office of Minority Education Programming. It's just now called OMED Educational Services, and that's another office that really partners with tutoring and academic support. We train all of our tutors the same way through the same program, so you get the same great expertise, professionalism, no matter who you're working with. But OMED also offers, particularly this semester, a lot of drop-in tutoring, primarily in STEM classes, but not strictly. I saw they also have some good tutoring in INTA and econ, et cetera, primarily between 4 and 8 p.m. in the afternoon. And the OMED services are available to all students. They're not only for students who identify as minority students. So we have all of these great peer opportunities. We also have PLUS, which stands for Peer-Led Undergrad Study. It's like a way to go. I think it's a low-pressure way. If you're going to a tutoring appointment, you're going to get more out of it if you show up prepared and you're like, this is what I'm doing in my class. This is kind of where I'm stuck. This is the type of program I want, problem or question or concept I want to work on. which is great way to prepare. It's also a good way to prepare for office hours. But Plus also is programs that are available both in person. There's an in-person session each week and also a virtual session each week, primarily in our 1 and 2,000 level math and science classes. We have a few other opportunities too, where the Plus session is basically a facilitated super group study session. The Plus leader is a student who's already taken the class, earned an A at Tech, and is actually being paid to sit through the class again and knows exactly what's going on. And they actually just help facilitate active learning and studying and really wrestling with the material with a group of students that are taking the class. It's a very, very effective way to learn. It's very engaged. It's not passive, if that makes any sense. So that's another thing that students should try out. And you can get schedules for all of these things at the tutoring.godtech.edu website. And then we also, I don't want to leave this out too, we also have academic coaching. That's not with peers, it's not with undergraduate students, but it's with staff in our office. And so sometimes a student might be like, well, I don't really need tutoring, but I need to help with, like, how do I actually map out studying for a test? Or how do I actually work on my motivation? Or how do I actually work on prioritization and time management? Or even, like, how do I even know that I'm, like, prepared for a test? And so students can work on all of those things with an academic coach. Those appointments, again, like all of these other services, are free, available to everybody. These are appointment-based. All the students can just go to advising.godtech.edu and they can make an appointment for an academic coach. And we have both virtual and in-person appointments for that. And then didn't want to forget, Dr. Steinbart mentioned that she's having her office hours outside right now. So we also have a lot of drop-in tutoring opportunities, which is, don't even have to plan for it, just show up. So the math lab is actually outdoors, and not in the rain. Students will be covered under the Skiles courtyard, which is covered from 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. There's some virtual evening hours. There's virtual tutoring, drop-in tutoring for organic chemistry, first-year chemistry. Physics is doing in-person drop-in tutoring in our building, as is CS 1371. So lots of ways for students to either make an appointment or drop in, connect with peers, and learn together.
Thank you. That was a wonderful overview. I will point out on the slide it says TA office hours, and I think this is true in math and physics. Y'all jump in if I'm incorrect, but at least in chemistry, our TA office hours, the drop-in tutoring is our TA office hours. So we, students, instead of just being able to go see their specific TA, we open up all of our TAs to all of our students for a certain course. And so that can be really helpful, for a couple of reasons. First of all, a TA may only have 1 or 2 office hours, and now they have access to all of this drop-in assistance. But also it's really nice because sometimes hearing it from a little bit different perspective, so you have the instructor, you have the TA, and then you have this other TA that you go to see and drop-in office hours, and hearing those different ways of explaining the same material can be really, really beneficial for students. Am I correct in physics and math? That's the same as true?
Yes, and also it's nice because then you might have a friend that's also taking a calculus class, and you can go even though you don't have the same TA, and yet you can get the assistance that you need.
We've kind of tried something new in physics this semester. We still have the drop-in, walk-in help. The TAs are doing the tutoring in the Clough building, but we've used a lot of the content that we've created for our online labs over the past 2, 3, 4 semesters now, and we've taken the 2-hour, 45-minute lab meeting. In the last 45 minutes are activities that the students can do at home or virtually, and so that frees up the very last 45 minutes of the lab meeting where they can work on those activities with their TA or their friends, or they can get help from the TA. So it's kind of like a TA office hour, or we tell the students it's a choose your own adventure, like what sort of help you might want, or you don't need help, you can leave early and use that extra time somewhere else.
That's fantastic. That's a really great resource. Tyler, if we could transition to the very last slide, and as we're doing that, I see a great question in the Q&A, and I'd like to get some feedback from my panelists. Second-year student finding their schedule very busy with a lot of things outside of class, and a class that's more challenging than expected. thinks it's okay, but a little afraid that the student is in over their head and it'll be too late to fix it. Advice on this? Any of the panelists, feel free to jump in.
I mean, I'd love to meet with your student. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Greco.
Oh, I was going to say, anonymous, you're probably right. They're in over their head a little bit, and that's okay, particularly they're a second-year student. So they're probably going to get in over their head. The grades in some of their classes might start to drop a little bit, but I would let them figure that out and maybe just try to be there to encourage them to up their organization, up their tips for success, to manage those extra responsibilities. I've noticed many students, I don't know, something about marching band is just a huge time commitment. Many students have a lot of commitments outside of the classroom, and as they're here longer at Tech, they pick up more and more of those commitments. Eventually they reach a point where they have to learn to prioritize and get a little more efficient at managing their time. So it's okay to let them kind of bite off more they can chew, and then fail a little bit, as long as they kind of self-correct and maybe you guide them a little bit there. So I would say very normal second-year student experience.
I would also add, for all students, first year or second year, this managing your time is really important, and to have a calendar so that you can go ahead and record when you're going to be going to class, when you're going to be studying, when you're going to get together with your friends, because not all of it is the academics here at Georgia Tech. There's so much more to learn, and you need to schedule those things, but you need to schedule those and know that they're upcoming, or you're going to do that, but you're going to also attend your class and go see your TA, etc., so that you can have that balance.
Dean Riggle, you were going to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would love to meet with your student and talk more about that if they were open to it. My thought would be, as a second year, they're probably getting used to like many have already suggested, just kind of the managing of the time. Marching band is in person, this service fraternity, I'm sure they're doing service projects on the weekend. And so, and maybe having them take a look to see, are they a student leader or a leader student, is kind of a phrase sometimes that we talk about a little bit as well. Are they kind of having equal amounts of time in the things that they're doing? And so I think some of that is, as Dr. Greco kind of said, they kind of have to just kind of move through it. But if they wanted to meet with someone to discuss that, I'm happy to do that. Anyone in our office would be. I don't know if we do we want to talk about the specifics of the withdrawal and grades out? I mean, more tangible policy things, if they were to not do well in a class, or if maybe at some point they did need to step back from a class, we could mention that if anybody wants to talk to that point.
Absolutely, and this question came up in the chat a little bit earlier about what is the withdrawal deadline. So just so everybody is sort of on the same page, we have something called drop add, which is the first week of classes. So during that first week, students can make all the changes to their schedules that they want, need, and there's no permanent record of that. After the first week of classes, whatever is on their transcript is what's there, but they have the chance to withdraw from a course. The deadline is sometime in October. Dr. Greco actually posted the calendar. So scroll down to October. The deadline is in October. After the 30th. October 30th. So it's pretty late. I guess we go later in December this year than we often do. So it's October 30th, and students do have the option of withdrawing. They end up with what is called a W on their transcript, indicating that they did sign up for the course and then they withdrew from it. What I would say is that students should not withdraw from courses without checking in with their academic advisors. Dr. Spencer, would you like to address that a little bit more?
I'm sorry, you blurped out for just 1 second. Can you just repeat the question?
My advice is that students should not withdraw from courses without checking in with their advisors.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes students just sort of think that they need to withdraw from a class. Sometimes students do need to withdraw from a class, but it's a decision they should make very intentionally. We always recommend that they should meet with their academic advisor. Unfortunately, the drop date this fall is the 30th is a Saturday, which we don't love, which means students need to be a little more proactive with that time management and talk to their advisor before Saturday the 30th. And we also often recommend they talk to their professors about it too, to actually get some good feedback on where do they really stand, et cetera. We usually do a couple of workshops to even help students who are trying to make a decision about should they drop a class or not, because we want them to feel like they've made a good decision and they really own it and they understand all of the potential repercussions for that.
And I will say, as both an instructor and an academic advisor, that I definitely strongly encourage students to go talk to their advisors and their instructors. I would, as the folks supporting them, also, maybe be prepared for either prepare them or be prepared for some complaints that, well, they didn't tell me what to do. They didn't tell me to drop the course or not to drop the course. And we won't in most cases. As an advisor, I often, talk about my job is to give you information and advice, but you as the student, your job is to actually make the decision. And so I'm here to support you in arriving at that decision, but the decision is yours. Same thing as an instructor. I'm not going to tell a student yes or no. I'm going to say, this is where you are. This is what has to happen to get where you want to be. And usually for me, honestly, I think the bigger question is not, can a student do it, but is it worth it for the student to do it? If we factor in the stress, those types of things, it's often not really about, are you able to do this? Georgia Tech students tend to be able to do it, but it may not be worth it in that time period, given what else they have going on in their lives. So sometimes I think that that's frustrating for students. It's like they've spent the last 18, 19, 20 years waiting for people to stop telling them what to do. And then they get into the situation where they would really like us to tell them what to do. And we're like, nope, sorry, it's your decision. But we will try to support them through that decision.
You're muted, Carrie.
Oh dear, thank you. You'd think after all this time I'd stop doing that. But there's a new question in the Q&A, and while I kind of process it, let's take a quick look at the tips for success. And, if each panelist could maybe just pick one of those and briefly, mention the one of those that you feel like, is most important, or your spin on that.
I say get help early. I talked about that already. I think I can't tell you how many. I've been at Tech, this is year 16 for me. And so while I know that other staff have been here probably for a lot longer, but I've sat with like hundreds of students who will come in midterm, end of the term. And I think that our students in particular are just not used to asking for help. And I think encouraging them that it's okay to ask for help. It doesn't mean that you're inferior to your peers or anything like that, but just encouraging that it's okay to ask for help and help trying to figure out the situation, having those conversations. And that's a lot what the dean's office does. We'll often sit down with students and just say, hey, this is kind of what I'm hearing. Here are your options. Why don't you marinate on it for a little bit? And then maybe in a couple of days, let me know what you're thinking. And then we can kind of talk about it more. And so getting help early, I think, is hands down probably the one that I'd highlight.
I would echo Dean Riggle on that. I've also been at Tech for 16 years. And, we often tell, as I think maybe Dr. Greco mentioned earlier, you don't want to play catch up in your classes at Tech. So you want to, if you feel like maybe I'm not absolutely where I want to be with my classes, or if I'm feeling stressed out, or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, whatever it is, connect with resources earlier, because I know that Dean Riggle spends a lot of time working with students on stress management, and in our office with academic coaching and also with all of our peer learning, et cetera, we're also helping with stress management by working on things like, let's have a plan for time management. Let's have a way to actually set daily goals. Let's have a way of, strategy to actually, schedule that tutoring appointment, et cetera. And by doing those things, everything begins to feel better and fall into place. So yeah, connecting with resources proactively early rather than waiting till you feel like, oh wow, it's so late and now I feel overwhelmed, is so important.
I guess I would pick 3 and 7. Don't procrastinate, learn to manage your stress. Because I think procrastination is not usually about being lazy, particularly with tech students. I think procrastination there is like an avoidance because they are trying to manage the stress of having a lot of work, or a fear or an anxiety about how they're going to perform if they do that work. So I would say pay attention to the feelings you have about procrastination. I used to be a habitual procrastinator, and I finally made the connection that it had to do with anxiety about quality of the work that I was going to do. And I would put it off until another type of anxiety took over, which is the anxiety that you're not going to meet a deadline. Then I would just be forced to do it. But sort of realizing the mental health aspect of procrastination and working on that made a big difference for me. So I would say, to be successful, pay attention to that feeling you have about procrastination and try to address the root cause.
I'll also choose two numbers. I'll choose number 1 and number 6. Number 1, managing your time, to really sit down and think about, so what do I have this week? What do I have this semester? Where are my exams going to fall? Where are my quizzes, my homeworks, and so forth? Just so that you have a little map and you recognize that, hey, this is going to be an extremely busy week, so I need to prep for it. And to be able to manage your time instead of letting the time manage you and always doing last minute stuff. Also, I like number 6, set daily goals. And the idea is there's a lot that one needs to get done. You're not going to get it all done right now, but to have daily goals that you are making progress toward the things that you need to get done, or you want to get done, or you want to participate in. So to have your daily goals of, I'm not going to solve everything right now, but I am going to work on this homework for 45 minutes, etc. So having those daily goals and to be able to accomplish those goals, I think is really helpful.
I agree. I totally agree. I think mine would be number 5, actually. I think tech students tend to be extremely high achievers. And so, you know, they can do so much. That doesn't mean they need to do all of it. And so really having them stop and think about, you know, so I can do undergraduate research and an internship and study abroad and a minor. Yes, you can, but do you need to, and is all of that going to bring you happiness? Is it going to further your goals? I mean, we do have to do things that don't make us happy sometimes, but is it going to really do a lot to get you to where you need to go? So I think that would be mine. Some great questions and comments in the chat. Anonymous commented about it's good to have the option to withdraw, but proactive review of progress is more important than retrospective. And I think all of the panelists would agree with that. I don't think we were, indicating that withdrawal should be necessarily the way to go. And we do want students to start thinking about things early. And there's absolutely a financial piece to that too. You know, once those hope dollars are gone, they're gone. So no, I think we agree with that statement completely in terms of really being proactive. Should students have a pretty good feel for how they're doing in their classes by that parents' weekend? So Dr. Greco has put in, they're really generally probably going to have one exam. In some courses, it may be a little bit more, but I feel like for a lot of them, it's going to be, one exam at that point. But by that withdrawal deadline, they probably are going to have 2 in there. So that's a little bit more data. So I think my general answer to that would be it sort of depends on the course. But I also would encourage students, if they're not sure where they stand, to go talk to their instructor. If they don't have any idea of where they are, then they need to sit down with the instructor and really say, I'm not sure how all of these pieces and parts fit together. Can you help me kind of make an assessment on where I am? Anybody have anything to add to that one?
I also like the fact that the midterm grade report is going to come out in early October, and the deadline to withdraw from a class is late October. So you have a lot of time in between then to talk to your instructor and to see, can I turn this course around, and what would it take before you have the drop date?
Absolutely. So this is one I'm not sure I'm going to have great insight on, but maybe our panelists can help. Where can students go to hang out and watch TV and movies? With the Student Center under construction, that does limit some things. And I think another piece to that is folks we're kind of coming out of our shells a little bit more and socializing a little bit more. But does anybody have any general ideas on anything?
I'll chime in as Tyler. Do you want to say something?
I was going to say just briefly, I think maybe their residence hall, if they're staying on campus, may be an opportunity to engage in those type of things, as well as utilizing engage.gatech.edu, which is our engagement platform for students to find out about different events on campus. Several organizations may host a movie night or just something else that is social, that students can kind of come together and bond and maybe do board games or whatnot. That is also another way for students to kind of just mix and mingle. But I'll let Dr. Riggle chime in as well.
Yeah, great. I mean, you stole my spiel there, Tyler. Just kidding. I was going to say that, yeah, the residence hall is a great place to be able to do that. We have a lot of, the campus is very beautiful, and I know that campus tours were kind of not something that were happening over the last year or so, and so the campus is very beautiful, and I would say to maybe get outside and sit outside. I know that's probably not the most ideal location for TV or movies or things like that, but maybe trying to find some space outside to do those things. I said the Clough Undergraduate Learning Center is very beautiful. We have a new library that has some spaces in there. And so I know that there are platforms that allow folks to kind of watch movies and TVs together virtually as well. And so that could be an option. I was going to highlight that Six Flags night is coming up this week too. So if they just want to get out and do something fun, Six Flags is open only to Georgia Tech students, family participants, and so they can get a very reduced ticket for that. And so that's Friday night from 6 to midnight. So if they just want to go and do something, maybe not in front of an electronic device, that would be great. The Campus Recreation Center has started to put out signs on campus that are just indicating, instead of maybe taking a bus, take this path from this building to that building, this is how long it would take. This is kind of a wellness activity. And so really trying to focus on some of those activities I think would be great. So, one other thing I was going to say is First Center for the Arts has an exhibit called Traveling While Black, which is a VR experience that folks can kind of do together. And so there's different ticket times. Folks can kind of participate in that. It's a 20-minute immersion experience. And so there's some different material that folks can read after the event as well. So just some things that they can engage in with other folks on campus.
Those are all really good resources. The only thing that I can add is that if students look when they're walking around on campus, I'm in the Clough building, and all up and down our hallway there's bulletin boards, and all kinds of student organizations post their events on those bulletin boards. And just stopping for a minute to take a look can be really a great source for some of those things. I do understand that it's hard for some folks to put themselves out there and go do something on their own if they don't know anybody. Put me in a class of 250 18-year-olds, I'm super comfortable. Put me in a party of people I don't know that are my peers, maybe not so much. So I get that. But I do think encouraging folks to put themselves out there a little bit, maybe find a buddy to go check out a new event, something like that. It doesn't have to be somebody that they know super well, but just, having somebody there to kind of go check out a new experience, I think can be nice. The residence halls, the residence halls don't have a ton of room. And I think that there are many planned activities. We just may not be the folks that know all of the planned activities. But asking, the residence halls may not have the room to do it, but having your students ask their RA or their PL about activities, like where do they go? Those are folks who have experience on campus. They've been here before. I actually met with one of my advisees the other day. He's an RA, and he had like a million coolers and bags with him. And I asked, what is all of this? And his response was, I have an event for my residents after this and it was an outdoor space, and he was loaded up with all of his coolers and goodies and snacks for that outdoor event. So even if the RAs aren't hosting things, they are, I think, a good resource for ideas on where people are hanging out. I think we're close on time. So there was one question we haven't spoken about, but I think we gave some input in the Q&A box about these aspects of being proactive and resources, whether they're discussed in GT 1000. They are, but a lot of faculty, I mean, I talk about them in my courses as well. So I think a lot of faculty talk about them in the courses outside of GT 1000 as well. I think in my experience, students have opportunities to hear these things, but we've all been 18 years old at some point too, and probably remember not being ready to really digest it. Hearing it and digesting it aren't always the same thing. But if you feel like your students need more direction and need to hear those things, really encouraging them to talk to their instructors and to their academic advisors, I think is the way to go with that.
Carrie, really briefly, just as we close out, what advice would any of you or any of the panelists give to parents about if their student comes to them about changing their major? And just that conversation, supporting them, talking through the process with them, maybe, how does that go? What advice would you give to a parent?
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So if your student's thinking about changing a major, a really good first step to take is to actually work with our Exploratory Advisor. That's what she does full-time, is to help students think about whether they are pretty sure they want to, or they have no idea what they want to do, or they know exactly what they want to do, or if they're just thinking about, can I add a minors, can I add a certificate, what are my options at Tech? That's really what that resource is specifically dedicated to. Students can also go directly to their academic advisors. That can also be a good resource, but sometimes, especially in some of our bigger majors, they're going to be like, I can't really talk to you about all of your options on campus, but that's what the Exploratory Advisor does. And we're also having some really good workshops that are coming up before the change of major deadline for our first year students, which is also right at October 30th. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities on campus for some help to actually think about, how do I do this? Should I do this? What are the steps? What are the things I should be thinking about? Who should I talk to, etc.? Because we want students to make a really good decision, because it's a big decision. But lots of students make it. I changed my major 6 times. I still graduated on time, as a board advisor though. So yeah, that's a really good place to start, would be with the Exploratory Advisor. And if you go to advising.godtech.edu, we actually have links to it on that homepage, including a video on exactly how do you make an appointment with that Exploratory Advisor.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time out your schedules to be with us here today. Definitely a lot of great gems and insightful knowledge and everything that was talked about. Please know that this will be recorded and posted to our website within 24 hours, parents.gatech.edu, under the virtual Stay Connected tab under virtual recordings. So that way you can rewatch it, share it again with another GT mom or dad that you know, and just keep pushing on. We're almost to the end of the fall semester already. So thank y'all so much again, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Go Jackets.